You were listening to the Never Meet Your Heroes podcast, conversations with artists about their work and inspirations. I am your host, Anthony Moses Sanchez. All right, welcome to an episode of Never Meet Your Heroes, our little social experiment with book club here. And I'm introducing my friend, Miss Sassy, Laura Paull.
Hello.
All the way from Cleveland.
Right.
And a quick introduction. We've known each other for a long time.
At least 12 years, yeah.
Met on MySpace, back when social media was a nice place to meet people. So go ahead and anything you want to introduce yourself with to the audience before we?
No, I'm just excited. Yeah, I mean, I'm just excited that you asked me to be a part of it, especially after we, spent a few years recording Sass Academy. So it's good to collaborate with you again and record. So this is really our first book that we're both reading together now.
Yes.
So we'll just, I have the book right here. I actually read the paper copy of it. So we both read Riot Days by Maria Alyokhina, who also goes by Masha. And she's a member of the punk protest group, Pussy Riot from Russia. Mm-hmm. And yeah, so, I've probably just first heard of Pussy Riot maybe around the time when the Olympics were in Sochi, actually. So during the time, of when this book was taking place back in 2012, I actually hadn't even heard of them yet. So I don't know, if you kind of recall, I just remember seeing videos of them being beat with a whip by the guards outside of the Olympics. So that's really like when I first recognized the name. And I think a lot of people recognize them from the ski masks that they wear, the different colorful dresses and tights. So I, it was, we were going back and forth about which books we wanted to read. And this book actually just came out earlier this year. So, I think just really relevant today with all of the different protests and demonstrations and, a feminist revival going on. So I was excited that this was one of our options here. So.
Right. The book came out in September this year, 2017. Mm-hmm. And I know you're excited because you went to the Women's March earlier at the beginning of this year.
Yeah, that was a fun bus ride out to Washington, D.C. And I mean, I'm in Cleveland, so it really wasn't too far, but that was amazing to be part of that. And I just remember going back and forth, like, should I go? Shouldn't I go? And because we just took a bus overnight there and, spent the whole day marching, but it ended up being really great. And of course, my mom was scared, but, and it was completely peaceful, though. I mean, it was great, like, to meet so many people and be part of one of the biggest demonstrations in our history. So so it was really cool. There's another one actually coming up next year in Las Vegas on the same day, January 21st. So
that'd be cool.
I know, I was thinking about going, and also because I wanted to see the Backstreet Boys.
No, it's all about NSYNC. It's all about NSYNC.
It is? They're not even together anymore. You can't say that.
I know.
No, because they have a show there that they've had, and it's ending in February. So I was like, I need to get out there before. It's like, if I could go to both at once, that would be really great. But no, so I've been, just trying to get more involved, and I think it, especially with the election of Trump, people are more outraged than ever before. And they want to be part of something, try to make a difference any way they can. So it's nice to see people getting so political because for the longest time it was something that, you never talk about politics, you never talk about religion. So,
I mean, but the timely thing about the book coming out is that, with they're still doing the investigation into Trump's possible collusion. But behind closed doors, a lot of people believe that he did collude with Russia and Vladimir Putin. They just don't know how exactly, and they don't know officially, right? So,
right.
So it's really timely to also see that this kind of slow, kind of undemocratic, authoritarian regime that Vladimir Putin's created in Russia for all this time, and similar to how this is kind of slowly starting to emulate this time. In 2012, she was arrested for hooliganism in her band. So yeah, it's just I guess I feel like such a doomsdayer, but like we don't know how far this authoritarianism is going to go. But
right.
But it's great to see that, like, you know, Pussy Riot being a punk feminist band and being anti-patriarchal, which I think a lot of us liberal type people are right now. We're very anti-patriarchal, so it's really cool to kind of see this book,
especially to be in a place like Russia where you can be arrested for things like hooliganism with religious hatred, you know, and that's what happened with them is, so they staged a protest first in the square, which we were talking about a little bit earlier. You know, and they had fake names planned, just said they were students doing a project, got rid of their poster they're going to set on fire. And then their big demonstration was the punk prayer. So what that was is, I think there's 12 members of Pussy Riot, and 5 of them went to the Christ the Savior Cathedral.
That's what I was looking up right now. Cathedral of the Christ the Savior, which is in Moscow, right?
Yeah. So this is like a big, beautiful church, famous, you know, they have velvet ropes, you know, and I think, you know, Russian Orthodox too, obviously you don't have women leading services. It's a very, again, patriarchal religion and just setting there. So for them to sneak into the church past guards with an electric guitar.
What I'm seeing is like when I went to Westminster Abbey in London, and, you know, like in America, we don't have super staunchy 1,000-year-old churches, but I'm imagining like, that the church is probably how Putin kind of reaches his power across Russia. So the church is probably beyond sacred there than it is here, you know, like, you know, here we have rock bands in our churches, some of the churches. So it wouldn't seem so crazy, but it's hard to believe, like, okay, yeah, they like went up there. They brought their amp and a bass guitar for sure, right?
Yeah, and they had, what was it, like an American tourist that helped get through with the guitar too. So because the guards would just be intimidated, you know, by like someone American, you know, speaking English or, you know, what have you, and, you know, let them through. So they knew this was their big chance. So the book really talks about like working up to that point and how they had to practice in secret, and just the anxiety that goes along with it. You know, a lot of, obviously some members weren't comfortable moving forward with it because they knew what the repercussions could be from putting on a protest of that scale. So yeah, just getting past them, you know, they got in with their equipment and they had this song, the punk prayer that they put together.
Which you can see on YouTube. There's a video of it. I don't know, not the protest, not the hooliganism, just I think the song itself.
Yeah, well, there was a video recorded too, so that's really what got them in the biggest trouble because, you know, obviously, you know, they staged this performance for the people in their immediate vicinity, but they wanted to spread the message though, because what they're protesting there is that there was no separation of church and state. You know, and we have that here as well, but it's just Putin and the Kremlin and the Orthodox Church, they weren't respecting that. So they were using the church as another political partner of theirs and really intimidating people. And
at the beginning of the story, she's saying like how, you know, you can pay money to do things at the church. That the church is just like not, it's not even that sacred, but they act like it's sacred, but you could as long as you have enough money, you could do whatever you want there.
Right. Obviously, just like politics, it's going to have a lot of corruption. I mean, just look at the churches here, the Catholic Church in America. So, of course, it's based on that. So that's basically, you know, the members of Pussy Riot were taking a stand against that, and to do so in a public setting, in that setting especially, was really what set them off. So if you recall in the book, there's a part about, I think it was the candle tender, that there was a woman lighting candles in the church that was like appalled, and she actually said that it was traumatic for her to experience that.
Because when at the trial, she was very like, oh. No, I'm I'm still connecting with the anti-patriarchal part where they, you know, Putin would publicly say how, you know, the women should learn how to cook borscht. Like, you know, it's kind of like know your place type of thing.
Yeah, so, like your place is in the kitchen. Teach your women to make borscht.
So it's like, it's a combination of, you know, being anti-religious, anti-national, and like not being feminine. I mean, which is like everything that Pussy Riot's, I guess, aspiring to, especially because their band is based on the other band, Riot Girl. So there's a great explanation about how they got to the name. But go on, you're still talking about the lady at the church.
Oh yeah, no, but that's all I wanted to say, is that just how shocking it was, you know. I mean, if something like that happened here, I'd be like, oh, that's pretty cool, you know. But you know, but imagining it happening in some big cathedral, you know, I'm sure conservatives would be really alarmed by that. But would they be imprisoned? Probably not. You know. Hey, I was just coming in here to say a prayer.
Never say never.
What they were doing.
I think that if it happened to somebody like, you know, someone, I don't know who's a big preacher right now, like it used to be Billy Graham, somebody like that, then I think
Joel Osteen or something.
Yeah, I think that there would be an issue. I think that they would be sued. I don't know that they would be imprisoned for 2 years,
right?
Like Masha was, which is her nickname. It's also really sad, but also like you had pointed out to me before, how the little drawings, like I should go over, like stylistically the book is great, and that it begins very much like a punk rock story. Like a punk, like it's very erratic and frantic at first. It doesn't really you feel them kind of like they're making a plan, they don't know what they're going to do. They're kind of like, they do part of a plan and then they get caught, and so they can't do the full plan, and then they do another part of the plan. And then it's them running around and trying to hide from the authorities, like hiding in cafes, and living in basically like a place without any internet, and eating very like ramen. And then when she does go to trial, like you mentioned, with the trial was totally bunk. Like there was like it was like everything was stacked against them. It was very like, I feel like I overused the word pedantic, but like just very like, you know, you don't understand what you're doing with your life. And she's like, there's a part of it that is kind of like she doesn't really understand, which is why the book is so interesting as a kind of nonfiction fiction to me. And then after the trial, when she gets spoilers, she gets convicted, and the slow resolve that happens, like even before she goes to trial, the Russian dissidents who kind of like helped her a little bit, but couldn't really help her, right? Because it's just, you know, that Russia and China, and I'm sure a lot of other countries, have a very like, the way they stifle any kind of political uprising. It's really difficult to do anything there. So the thing that I love the most, like the notes that I have here, like that I'm looking down at, I don't know how I look on camera with this.
You always look good. I mean.
No, I mean, I don't know if I look like I'm falling, it's like I'm nodding off. That
it was a good book, we swear.
That like, I guess if I had to write a review about it, like rather than being cliche and saying that this is about how a human transcends, that it's a book about the resolve to be activists and the fight for human rights. How it's about the people that she meets in prison, the books that she reads, and the way that she documents the human rights issues, and how she kind of really just matures. Like it really just like finally realizes that, you know, I guess prison is supposed to make her feel like regret what she did, and it did the opposite to her. So that's what I loved the most about it. You know, even at the end when she in 2013 she's released because of an amnesty bill, and her, you know, all the stuff that you're talking about, the whole world was pushing on Russia over this. So, you know, she had these little glimmers of hope throughout the book of like that towards the end with the house across the street with like the sign,
the banner up,
the banner. Even when she
Yeah.
was going to trial, her friends kind of like waving to her, and she getting to say hi to them every now and then. I think like that, and like, you know, being able to see her son every now and then. I think, you know, I'm making it up. She doesn't quite say. It's so much more about her political resolve against Russia, but at the same time, it's like a primer for other people who, you know, might be in a similar situation, who will have the will to fight. So that's my tangent.
Right. No, I think that was really, really well put. And to think about the life that she was leaving behind too, because as we were talking a little bit about, you know, just in our notes that, you know, she was only 24. And at the time she was in her 4th year of college. She had a 4-year-old son, Philip, who actually did the illustrations in the book, which I didn't know at first. I actually, when I was going through the book, I thought she drew those while she was in prison. Like, I'll just show you an example of one. I don't know if you can see it there.
So
and I'm
cute.
like, what? Yeah, I was like, wow. Okay. So drawer. But so her son, you know, she's a single mother. She's leaving, you know, her son behind, you know, talking about, you know, he had 0 that morning. He dropped him off at kindergarten, and then she went off to the church. So just knowing that, you know, from there, they, like you said, they went into hiding after that, which luckily they were all wearing their masks. So,
yeah, which is really like so interesting that they had. It's interesting that they knew enough to like wear masks and wear the same jackets, and then only be in the cafes, but then not enough to like, I don't know if they had like the burner phones. I couldn't quite understand what was.
Yeah, they were taking the batteries, I think, in the SIM cards out of their phones everywhere they went, so they wouldn't be tracked. And they were in contact with a lawyer the whole time, so that certainly helped. But to imagine them sneaking into cafes, like locking themselves in the bathrooms to do Skype interviews. Yes. Like, here we are talking about the lighting, you know, and up for this, and they're in a bathroom, a public bathroom, locking the door where they have the baristas knocking on the door, turning the lights on and off, trying to get them out of there. Yeah.
Yeah, and apparently they were just using like their phone.
Like, sorry, excuse us, you know, because once they sent out that video, you know, it was meant to be something to spark their message and, you know, down with the patriarchy, and, you know, people are afraid to speak out. So that's why it was important to them to get the video out there,
right,
and to hold those interviews. So, you know, at that point, you know, that took place in August, and they were August 2012 is when the protests took place, and they were arrested. But, you know, it almost sounded, you know, they stayed with friends or, you know, people that would let them stay the night in an apartment somewhere. They're sleeping on floors. Ultimately, they're arrested, and charged, like we said, with hooliganism, inspired by religious hatred, which, just for the fact that it took place in a church, you have to appreciate some of their lyrics, though.
Yes.
Like, Putin peed his pants was one of the chants that I especially liked, you know, to get to someone like him.
Yeah.
I think you can pull a lot of similarities between Putin and Trump, and, you know, see how pretty obvious it is that they do get along with one another.
Yeah.
So it's just interesting to just hear about how it went down, and the fact that it only lasted for 40 seconds before they had to take off, before they were rushed by the guard. Well, so
the power of the writing is like it felt like it lasted longer, but to realize that in reality it got shut down really fast. Security guard kind of came out right away.
Right. So for just those 40 seconds, and, you know, to be placed in detention, and then, you know, I went through and looked up some videos, and there's, you know, some photos available that just the way that the trials take place, they're kept behind a glass wall, like an aquarium is how she described it. So they're sitting on a bench squished into this little glass cage almost. And Masha did a lot of the just presenting and, you know, cross-examining herself, which I thought was really impressive too, just the way that she speaks and writes. And I know she worked with a lot of different translators and another editor. So I thought the book was really well put together.
Yes.
And it's so easy to read because they're just in these really short paragraphs.
Right.
So.
Yeah, it's like there's kind of like a paragraph. Sometimes, like I said at the beginning, it's very short bursts of like there's an idea, and then usually like the header of the paragraph is kind of comes out of the last paragraph, so it kind of points you towards what I don't know, that itself could be examined as like an anti-patriarchal writing style, the way that it kind of moves through. It's not. This comes up in other like queer theory, queer books where my name is, I'm looking at my books here, but Dujana Barnes or Audre Lorde, where, you know, less obsession with the linear chronological story, even though this is chronological, just the way that, like you said, it's like little bursts, little paragraphs, and then a header, and little paragraphs and a header. It's kind of like even how we're talking now. I'm going to say a few things and you're going to say a few things. I'm going to say a few things. Instead of it just being like she's just telling you the whole story and the facts and you're just going to sit there and kind of just, you know, nod your head to everything. Instead, she's kind of like, I remembered this, and then I remembered this, and then I remembered this, and then I remembered this. And there was this guy and he said this. And then there's a quote from something. It's like I said, the erratic style.
Yeah, or a dialogue, and you know, or a poem. You know, there are poems mixed in. Then you see the illustration. So really, the bulk of the book is a prison diary.
Yes.
So, and it's really just in the imagery of it too is something that that I really appreciated about the book too. Just to imagine the conditions of a women's prison in Russia, where, you know, we're looking at the snowy weather conditions. I mean, there were prisons up in Siberia. Literally, people were afraid that they would be shipped off to Siberia because that was an option for her. So really just that, you know, it's negative 20 degrees outside and you're yelled at because you're wearing your overcoat to bed, you know, sleeping, if you're lucky, on a thin mattress that's barely a pillow, you know.
Yeah. I mean, it's tough to say, like, I mean, obviously prison's a place where they throw people and they don't think about them again. But that's the great thing about how she uses this time to continue her activism and fight for the rights of the other prisoners, because she knows that her term is shorter than the others. Like, other people kind of just give in to the idea, like, I'm just a nothing, an object. Like, she brings up, I'm just an object. But she's like, no, I'm a human and I'm going to stand up for my rights as a human. So, yeah, the prison diary part is the, like, you know, once you get to that part, I think that's why it took me longer to finish it, because it was kind of like, there was one night where I had a dream that I was actually in prison, but that's just my brain, how I work. I get so into it, I guess. But I was like, oh my God, this is hard to finish.
Yeah. Well, and they even said too, you know, like, oh, it sounds like a health spa. They let you do that. They let you go outside, and it's like, yeah, you get to go outside for an hour and stare up at an overcast sky, or, you know, walk to and from in below freezing weather conditions. You know, it's no health spa. I think for her too, being a vegan, it was especially hard for her to eat.
Oh, I missed that part.
Yeah, they're not.
She kept having hunger strikes. So I think that was a higher detail to me every time she did a hunger strike.
Yeah, it sounded like, I was trying to go back and see, just because there's not a lot of the entries, I guess you could say, for the prison diary. There really aren't dates or anything for when they're recorded, but, you know, it looked like, just based on my research, that one of her hunger strikes almost lasted a full month. So, you know, because when she wasn't going through a hunger strike, she'd be eating crusts of bread and tea. And, you know, one of the biggest pieces for me that was alarming, as I mentioned, was that they were rolling up little balls of dough and sticking them in the cracks around the window just to keep the cold out. So what they would do is, which I was actually surprised by, that they had the human rights I think they had meetings with her, as if you recall, like there would be two human rights advocates that would come in. I don't know if it was once a month, but the prison guards were really intimidating the prisoners to not share anything, say,
Yeah.
Tell them, it's fine, that the temperature is fine, that you're being fed, that this is happening. And the prisoners were afraid to speak out, but not in the case of Masha, who was very upfront
Right.
with the conditions there.
Plus, she was being punished and others were being punished when they did talk to her. The last hunger strike was about that, the padlocks and her being basically, I guess, in solitary, it sounds like. And even if someone did talk to her, somebody got in trouble for smoking a cigarette with her and laughing at a joke, and they added another year to her term, like she didn't get parole. So
Right.
it was like, it was
so they're threatened, don't talk to her, this is what will happen to you, because she was one of the only political prisoners. So it's specifically, you're a political prisoner. The rest, she does talk about the women that were murderers and, held for petty crimes. And, just for the fact that she was a political prisoner, they kept her in solitary for most of the time.
Yeah.
She had to really negotiate her way in to even be part of the general population or eat with the other prisoners or do anything outside of just sit in her cell alone.
Yeah.
So very intimidating, threatening, and just, with some of the conditions that she spoke out against, she was, I think they said she was the first prisoner in history to spark a change based on the lawsuits that were filed because of the prison conditions. So that in itself helped inspire some of the other prisoners to take part in that and really to speak up. Because the guards themselves were coming to her and saying, why are you doing this to us? How do you think we feel? We're not paid much at all.
Yeah, we're not getting paid very much. No one's lining up to get a job here. And she's just like, wow, like that's, you're trying to get my pity. Like,
how can you compare their lives to hers? So it's really just, that was kind of shocking too, especially that there were women guards that, female guards that were doing this. And I hate to compare the two, but while I was reading it, I thought a little bit about Orange is the New Black.
Oh yeah. No, I thought about it totally. I was like, why did they turn Orange? Well, this book barely came out, but Orange is the New Black is about, I don't care for it, but go ahead.
Yeah. I actually read the book that it was based on.
Oh,
and
you did?
I did read it a few years ago, and I've watched all the seasons of it, and, they too, bring to light a lot about the conditions, but it's so different, obviously, in America. And, especially with this most recent season, there was a riot that took place after the death of a Black inmate. So I saw, I was thinking about some of the similarities in terms of, especially because she was treated like a celebrity coming in too, because people were familiar with her. And they have, in Orange is the New Black, they have a character that's based on Martha Stewart that comes in. So she's treated much differently. Yeah. So there's a famous like TV chef that's arrested and comes to the prison and puts on like cooking classes for them and things like that. And so she was treated a lot differently, but the opposite, in fact, that she was, put in a private room with like her own seltzer water maker and like what have you. But but it made me think about that too, just the way that you really are treated without any dignity. Like you're just a number, that has to be locked away and do your time and put it in. But if you're, 2 years sentence for a 40-second protest.
Those systems, whether here or in Russia, are built so that way now we could get into a whole tangent about how the prison system doesn't work, how you're supposed to not do bad things because if you go to prison, you'll be treated like this. But I don't think that people realize that human beings will adapt, and either they'll just kind of sink into it and that they'll just make that normal, or, they'll be like a Piper in Orange is the New Black and kind of just never get it and kind of just keep throwing tantrums like a little girl. Or, like Masha, who turns it into an opportunity to do something greater with her activism. And so that's why I would, when I'm reading this, it's like, oh, this is a completely different person, or at least the story that she wrote is. Maybe someone else will write a different book about her and be like, no, actually she was like Piper, but
I don't know. Yeah.
But we
No,
know
I mean,
that
she
what
definitely
she
went
did.
through a lot of suffering, and you know, clearly it was made to be an example, you know, and to try to prevent others from protesting as well, because they may be sentenced in the same manner.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, even to this day, she still lives in Russia. You know, so she's, you know, I watched a book reading of hers, and, you know, someone asked, like, would you ever go back there? And, you know, she still lives there, and she's still involved in advocacy, obviously, and protesting and trying to make a difference in the conditions of the prison. So, so I think it really took the opposite effect of trying to prevent, you know, similar type of protests and activism. It really inspired a lot of people, obviously, in the country and then around the world, with the kind of media attention that it got and the book being released. So yeah, I mean, I really enjoyed it.
Absolutely.
It's a short read too. I mean, I'm pretty much a speed reader, but the paper or Dead Tree book is, you know,
is that what they call it now?
Yeah, Dead Tree books.
Oh, Lord.
It's 195 pages.
Yeah.
So it's really, I think it's easy to get to, especially like you said, you can kind of set it down and come back to it, because it is those short bursts, short paragraphs, poems, songs, what have you. And it's nonfiction. So you kind of, I had an idea in the end what was going to happen anyway. I knew she'd get out, you know. So I think in times like these, it's especially important to read from someone's perspective like that and take inspiration from it.
Yes. Well, I guess, should we sort of wrap up? That I agree. Obviously, I think from us talking for the last half hour or so, love it.
Yeah.
Recommend it.
Yeah, I recommend too, just looking up some of their songs.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so especially with Nadia, I don't know if Masha's still part of the band anymore. I think Nadia is their lead singer. So they have one music video, which I definitely recommend, is Make America Great Again.
Yeah, I just saw that when I was.
Did you watch that?
I didn't watch it yet.
Oh, okay. And she's, you know, dressed up as Trump, and, you know, and I mean, it's really just the imagery of it, and it's kind of hard to watch at times, but it's scary, like you were saying too, some of the similarities in what we see between Russia and America now, and everything that's going on with fake news. This is fake news. You can't believe what's out there. I mean, trying to prevent free speech. It's scary.
It's like Trump like called Putin up and was like, "Hey, I want some of that in America," and he's like,
"Yeah, what should I do?
Here's how you do it.
Any tips?"
Yeah, but I'll take you. They're on Spotify as well with some of their songs. So definitely, you know, if you're at work, you're not supposed to be on YouTube. You can do that.
And I know, like you said yourself, admittedly, more of like a doomsday type, where you kind of expect the worst. Like even when we both were talking about The Handmaid's Tale, and like, you know, and how scary it is that something like that could happen one day. I mean, with the administration in place now, it's really not something that would completely shock me if like years from now that's what we were dealing with. So that's why it's more important now than ever that you do get involved and educate yourself. And you know, like today I was watching an interview where it stated, you know, more than half the population of America is female, but only 20% of our lawmakers are. So there's such a big push to get more women in office, more progressive leaders. So that's really what we hear. Yeah.
It's slowly happening.
And I like to think that even though this has like probably been the worst year that we've had in recent memory, you know, that it sparked such advocacy and interest in politics. And, you know, if you look at like recently with Roy Moore losing in Alabama, like little steps like that are bringing hope to us. So, you know, 2018, 2020, I think it's really going to be looking up for us. So
next book we're going to read Hillary, What Happened?
Yes, What Happened by Hillary Rodham Clinton. So I already got my copy. It's up on the bookshelf, and it is a longer one.
Order it now.
Yeah, so pick that up. So that's what we'll be reading now, you know, up next. So it talks, you know, a lot about Hillary's life, and obviously the election and what happened is a big piece of that. So we will be reading that next. So, you know, log on, download, get that sent out to you.
Stay tuned, kids.
Stay tuned, because we'll have more books to talk about. So thanks for listening.
All right. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to Never Meet Your Heroes podcast. Find us at nevermeetyourheroespodcast.com, where you can post comments, ask questions, and interact with artists and listeners. Also, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter and Instagram. And if you're on YouTube, don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe.